For 10 years, Jeremy Wade pursued river monsters for television. Across 6 continents, millions of people watched him fight deadly fish. But now that he's 69, he's finally revealing the real reason the show ended. There was more to it than simply running out of monsters. There were million-dollar proposals he turned down, covert instances he concealed from producers, and a startling revelation regarding the state of the rivers themselves. His fakery was encouraged by the network. Wade didn't agree. You will be shocked to learn what he has to say about the show's last days. On March 23, 1956, Jeremy Wade was born in Aldershot, a small, peaceful Hampshire town where Britain was still recovering from the war. At home, life was stable. His mother ran the household with serene rituals, and his father, an architect, sketched plans. Nothing bizarre, nothing wild. Aldershot was gradually transforming from its former garrison past into a softer, more suburban area. People continued to discuss rationing. Most families were cautious. There was no difference between the wads. Church, school, and basic holidays. You wouldn't believe a future river hunter was growing up in that peaceful home since everything was so well managed. But early on, something aroused music. When Jeremy was just 5 years old, it occurred. He packed a small rod made out of thread and garden canes for amusement when his family visited the riverway in 1961. He threw bread on the hook and hoped, even if it seemed absurd. The line tugged after several attempts. Music, a little perch, broke the surface. Something ignited inside him in that brief time. Every weekend, he pleaded to go fishing, music. He went to school with dried fish heads. Teachers saw his odd fixation. As the other boys kicked footballs, he hunted shadows by pressing his face against the stream water. No one was able to comprehend it. Not yet. The summers that followed were spent in streams and ponds. With a notebook in hand, he walked alone through the countryside in the 1960s, sketching whatever he came across. Because he came to the library so frequently, sometimes 5 times a week, the staff started calling him by name. He manually duplicated diagrams. Music, before he was 7 years old, he recognized species with accurate taxonomy. In his notes, he meticulously drew frogs, fish, insects, and music. Everything was observed and measured. He watched life move in the lake while crouching close to muddy margins for hours. These little things influenced his thinking. They made him learn to slow down. He learned to observe what others overlooked from them. Then a startling incident occurred. When he was around 10 years old in 1966, he investigated a local legend about a gigantic eel that was lurking in a muddy stream. He wanted to see it for himself. He fell in his haste. The water closed over his head as he was pulled down by the thick sludge. He struggled to get out, but instead sank farther, until someone saw him and helped him get out. He was silent, wet, and trembling when he got home. His family sprang into a frenzy. He was not allowed to explore by himself. But rather than deterring him, the fear only made him more determined. He started going out at night. Everywhere along the river, he carried his notepad, a small net, and an unwavering desire to comprehend music. After his family relocated to Iping a year later, he discovered something that seemed like priceless. The owner of the old tackle business retired and allowed it to decay. The shelves were drooping and covered in dust, but the drawers contained wooden rods, hooks, and lines. He turned it into a covert workshop. He borrowed old equipment, sneaked in via a loose back panel each night, and fished in silence until morning. After hours of perseverance, he managed to land a 2-pound roach one evening. 3 times, he measured it. In his book, he included every detail. It was a medal-worthy catch. Night after night, he continued to return music, trying out various techniques and baits. He proudly protected the location, which he used as his own laboratory. All of that river life was with him when he started at Uppingham School in 1968. Most pupils desired athletics. Biology was what Jeremy desired. Joining the school's biology club, he converted vacant classrooms into little labs stocked with specimens, sketches, and jars. He accompanied his music companions as they dissected fish that he had himself captured. Because of his ability to predict when fish would spawn or how they would migrate during different seasons, they began referring to him as the Fish Whisperer. He began writing brief reports about river ecology at the age of 16, and his teachers commended him for his correctness, which was well beyond his years. He frequently avoided music, sports practice in favor of studying fish anatomy by himself at his workstation. In 1970, a journey to Scotland followed. When the family traveled to the Highlands, Jeremy witnessed more untamed water than he had at home. After quietly practicing fly fishing with a book he stole from a local angler, he caught his first salmon at the end of the day. A trophy might have been in order. Anglers would have boasted just as much. After holding the fish for a short while, Jeremy let it go. His family looked on in shock, yet that little deed revealed the person he was growing into. From then on, his music emerged out of his respect for wildlife. It was the start of the conservation philosophy that will influence his entire life. At home, a more difficult situation developed. His father, music, encouraged him to pursue a secure career in engineering. Zoology was Jeremy's request. The supper tables were crowded with discussions. His dad discussed job security. Jeremy described his studies of fish, rivers, and the sense of life on the planet. He had piles of biological notes and sketches by the time he was 16. He was not going to abandon his dream. It made him stronger, but it also caused strain. He discovered that standing alone is frequently the result of pursuing your passion. Then came yet another terrifying experience. When he was 16, he went fishing on the Norfolk Broads by himself for his biology club. The storm came on suddenly. The vessel capsized. The icy water engulfed him. Nevertheless, he fought the current for more than 2 miles until coming ashore while clinging to his catch bag. He was tired, wet, and trembling. Music, he learned the harshness of water from his near miss. It also motivated him to acquire survival abilities. He did some first aid studies. He taught himself to remain composed under peril. Those teachings kept him alive on the rivers he explored for his show years later. He had produced a monster list by the time he graduated from college in 1974. Meon gigantic catfish, arapaima, and Goliath tigerfish are a few examples. He had red-circled the ones he had taken from National Geographic publications. These were not creatures of the imagination. He viewed them as a life map. As his companions got ready for regular jobs, he made a self-promise to search the world for those creatures. These teenage journals were the source of many of the subsequent appearances of river monsters. Thus, he studied biology at the University of Kent in 1974, music. His area of interest was freshwater ecology. The migration patterns of the European catfish, which can reach lengths of over 3 meters and weights of over 130 kilograms, were the subject of his senior thesis. He spent nights immersed in filthy water in the river's polluted tributaries in order to research them. His data was robust, but he took risks that other students shied away from. Scholars commended him. On the riverbank, they spotted a daring biologist who learned best. He worked in the aquarium at Bristol Zoo during the summers. He learned how to feed piranhas by hand there. A co-worker tripped and dropped a hand into the tank one day. He was bitten by the piranhas. Water was flooded with blood. Then chaos ensued. Jeremy didn't freak out. He looked. He researched. Risky fish captivated him. He spoke with employees the reasons behind their apprehension. His view that fear stemmed from miscommunication influenced his subsequent work as a television instructor. He spent a study semester in India in 1976, concentrating on the Ganges River's ecology. In addition to being stunning, the river was also hazardous. Its water transported industrial trash and sewage. He developed a high fever, vomiting, dehydration, and acute diarrhea after sampling fish. He was weak and shaky for over 3 weeks in the hospital. This near-death experience changed his perspective on tropical rivers. The giants and mysteries of rivers like the Ganges and the Amazon drew him in ever since. In Canterbury, he also taught fishing to disadvantaged children when he was a student. He combined science and excitement by telling them tales of men consuming fish to get their attention. Children adored it. They requested more. Jeremy saw that stories were a more effective way to teach people about animals than textbooks. It was an indication of what lay ahead for him. After earning a degree in zoology in 1978, he turned down offers of peaceful lab work. Instead, he went for adventure. Music, he was a self-employed tour guide in East Anglia's rivers. He set a local record for tench and gained a reputation for patience and expertise. He was described in local newspapers as a rising angler. He was able to enter the realm of his childhood dreams thanks to this daring approach. Jeremy Waite entered his dangerous life long before anyone knew his name, standing by the river with a makeshift fishing pole. Since that was the only way he could support his obsession with fishing, he accepted a menial teaching position in Hungary immediately after earning his degree in zoology in 1978. He was drawn in by the Danube River. Music made him restless with its endless stories, its ancient mysteries, and most notably the fabled Wells catfish. He, Music, slipped out in the dark despite communist regulations prohibiting night fishing. On icy riverbanks, where it was almost freezing, he sat by himself, waiting for something enormous to rise to the surface. Everything, Music, caught up with him one night in 1979. He was detained in a Soviet-style jail, Music, for a full day when local officials saw him and accused him of illegally interfering with wildlife. He was haunted by the terror, the solitude, and the chilly walls for years. However, something hardened within of him. His early run-in with authority drove him to more extreme realms. Music, he traveled to India for the first time in 1981, paying for it entirely out of his own pocket. People talked about the gooch catfish in whispers near the Key River. People were dragged into the water, they alleged. Remains floated downstream from funeral places, and they claimed that Music lurked nearby. Wade was interested in the truth. He once hooked a gooch that weighed about 100 pounds. He briefly experienced the surge of triumph. Wade struggled to keep his head up as a mugger crocodile swung in and ripped the fish away. His arms were torn apart. He spent weeks attempting to treat the wounds after they became contaminated by river water. Nevertheless, he came back and grabbed a 161-pound gooch that was 3 times larger than the average. The old tales were proven to be true in that moment. Music, he traveled the Amazon and wrote for Trout and Salmon magazine between 1982 and 1985. He pursued Arapima in Brazil in 1984, but the mosquitoes, Music, drove him back. Malaria developed from a single bite that spread to dozens of bites. The fever hit quickly. He trembled until he lost his grip. In vivid hallucinations, he saw enormous fish sprinting through the trees. He was pulled to safety by nearby residents. Vine extracts and simple treatments were used to treat him, but modern medicine had to win the battle. Music, after 3 months, he remained there. Malaria, he claimed, was like confronting any animal in the wild, frightful, Music. He wrote a book titled Third World Fishing in 1989 after witnessing enough risk to fill a lifetime. What he described stunned everyone. In the Mekong Delta, he had eluded armed poachers while attempting to document the truth. He has witnessed officials disregard everything while endangered species were snatched for pennies. One of the most discussed parts of the book was his escape from one party of smugglers. On every page, readers sensed his trepidation. Its candor helped him gain recognition in environmental circles and open doors he never would have thought possible. He appeared on BBC Radio in 1991. He stumbled into a narrative of a piranha assault on a diver in Brazil when he was meant to be calmly discussing fish migration. It was an unplanned moment that quickly spread. His voice seemed genuine, and people kept playing it back. HarperCollins made print proposals to him shortly after. Additionally, the story forced scientists to re-examine ancient piranha myths, and the argument gained credibility from WDE's, Music, own experiences. His voice in nature storytelling became well known after that one broadcast. He filmed Jungle Hooks, a pilot, in Guyana in 1992, a year later. Everything felt intense right from the beginning. His career high point was landing a Music 200-pound peacock bass but the festivities were cut short when a crew member was bitten by a poisonous snake. There was nothing left but to evacuate by helicopter. Storms destroyed machinery. They felt as though the jungle was against them. Although the pilot was never developed into a complete series, adventure aficionados began to hear about it. Music: when everything around Wade collapsed, people spoke about how he maintained his composure. He collaborated with David Attenborough's team on an Arctic Char 4, Music: Life in the Freezer part in 1994. He declined a full-time position offered by the club, who valued his expertise. He didn't want animal scenes to be faked. The unpredictably untidy turmoil of actual discovery was what he liked best. But his work with them broadened, Music, his horizons and reminded people that truth was more important to him than slick TV. He was heavily involved in Congo excursions by 1997. In the Field magazine, he wrote about his experiences avoiding rebel checkpoints, Music, and confronting armed men. He captured a record-breaking Goliath tigerfish that weighed more than 45 kilograms during one of these excursions. The thing was 5 feet long. Its teeth were as big as a great white's. He kept it at arm's length because a slight slip may rip muscle and flesh. The moment Wade saw those jaws up close, he saw why the locals were afraid. Many of his later television concepts were influenced by his Congolese experiences. 2008 then arrived. He approached Animal Planet about river monsters after years of refusal. He gave them an uncut demo reel that he had shot in the Congo by himself. There are no plans or scripts, only actual risk. Lightning came very near to being electrocuted in one scene. After silently observing, the executives agreed. When the show was approved, WDE's life was forever altered. In 2009, he returned to Guyana for the first season. For 3 exhausting weeks, he pursued the enormous devil catfish and seldom slept. The 150-pound monster he eventually hooked fought so fiercely that his shoulder snapped out of alignment. When the crew attempted to trim the video, he demanded that they keep it, Music. Pain demonstrated the true demands of the job. He looked for the vampire fish Parara in the Amazon during Season 2 in 2010. He was bitten multiple times while strolling through piranha-infested shallows. Even though the cuts required stitches, he persisted. He utilized the incident to explain to Music listeners that piranhas were only hazardous in specific situations. The audience was affected by that moment's candor. Season 3 in 2011 challenged him more. He faced off against a 300-pound alligator gar in Texas. He was nearly dragged underwater by the fish. He experienced genuine terror for a moment. He acknowledged it on camera as the production stopped. His image changed as a result of that brief admission. Strong, indeed, but also human. The show was an international hit by 2012. He returned to the Gwatfish after the India episode. It was dubbed a man-eater by locals. You remembered the stories that survivors told you. Choosing respect above awards, Wade caught a 200 bigouche and let it go. The episode was one of the series' most potent moments because of its blend of science, mythology, and moral decision-making, Music. In 2013, while deep in the Congo, Jeremy Wade was reminded of how untamed the river might be. The Goliath tiger fish he had just hoisted onto the boat had teeth that resembled knives. He briefly believed that he was in control of the situation. After that, the fish swung around and sprang forward. The anguish shot through his bones as its jaws slammed shut on his hand. As the teen momentarily froze, small trails of blood poured down his fingers. Since there was a genuine risk of infection and the puncture wounds were deep, Music, medications had to be airlifted in from a nearby city. The sound of rebel gunfire echoed through the trees as all of this was going on. It seemed as though the entire river was holding its breath. He remembered the episode because it was one of the few times he realized how close danger was on both sides of him, given the fish in front of him and the chaos all around him. A year later, he discovered that even when it comes from something that is not attempting to harm, power may nevertheless cause pain. Music. In 2014, while filming an Arapiama episode in Brazil, an 80-pound fish struck his chest with its tail. He felt as though someone had thrown a steering column into him with the force of the blow. He discovered later that his ribs had shattered. He was told by the doctors that internal bleeding might occur, and production was put on hold for 2 weeks. He felt that the tale was more important than the agony, so he made an effort to continue working. The video demonstrated how frightening these enormous freshwater animals could be and captured the full impact of the arapaima. Then, in 2015, the cold in Mongolia brought him dangerously near to the brink. His body began to shake as he stood in a cold river looking for a moment. He soon lost his ability to think. He became hypothermia so quickly that he started having hallucinations. Shortly afterward, he passed out from tiredness. Music. He was dragged out and revived by the crew using cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Later on, he claimed that he had not experienced such terror since his initial fight with malaria many years prior. It demonstrated how the environment itself could turn into the true monster. He caught a 400-pound bull shark while in Papua New Guinea in 2016. He felt conflicted between upholding local traditions and safeguarding the species, so he wanted to release it in response to growing anti-shark finning demonstrations. Locals had a different opinion of his choice. He was accused of violating tradition by some. Others justified his decision. The incident demonstrated how fishing poses more than just physical risks in various societies. It poses difficult questions with no simple answers and bears a lot of moral weight. In Suriname that year, the threat came from the sky rather than the water or wildlife. As a storm passed across the neighborhood, a cameraman was struck by lightning. Music, everyone hurried to assist him after the shock momentarily immobilized him. It was more difficult because of the remote location. Wade later claimed that he refrained from discussing the incident out of concern that if the word got out too much, the show may be terminated. The videographer made a full recovery, but the incident served as a reminder of how erratic nature can be. By 2017, Wade was confronted with an unexpected challenge. He had nearly no monsters on his list. He had been following animals like the Goliath tigerfish and the para for almost 10 years, traveling across countries. Each episode drew in close to 2 million people, but he sensed the end was near. The majority had little known threat, and only a few uncommon species were left. Exaggerating stories or fabricating enthusiasm were not his goals. Producers heard the truth from him. Since actual monsters were becoming scarce, they recognized that the show had reached its inevitable conclusion. In Zambia that same year, he witnessed a river die right in front of him. A portion of the Zambesi had been contaminated by illegal gold mining, and dead tiger fish drifted by. The water turned murky and had an odd fragrance. Mercury and other toxic substances had contaminated the river, killing hundreds of fish. He wasn't going to concentrate on a monster hunt that day. Instead, he captured the devastation on camera, demonstrating to the world how quickly an ecology can be destroyed by avarice. It turned out to be one of his most impactful episodes. Network's need for CGI monsters to revive the series added to the pressure. They wanted him to pursue imaginary animals. He said no. He told them about the incident in Peru when his cruise boat was sabotaged and severed in the middle of the river. On that day, they nearly perished. He explained to producers that the show was successful because it was authentic. The show would lose its character if they introduced artificial threats or digital creatures. Instead of compromising the series' veracity, this conflict forced the team to discontinue it. He shot his final major hunt in Venezuela later that year. The last creature on his list, the para, was captured. He was severely affected by the symptoms of dengue fever shortly after filming. Deep exhaustion, a high fever, and muscle aches. He recuperated for months. That moment marked the conclusion of the show, but it wasn't until later that the hidden cost of his trips was revealed. A $1 million offer for a spin-off series was made to him immediately following the finale. He declined. The story was ended, he remarked, and he didn't want to add more to something that was already concluded. Fans were curious as to why he didn't do interviews for a time, but the answer was straightforward. Honesty meant more to him than celebrity. He went back to the Miang with Mighty Rivers in 2019. He dissected a fish during a live segment and extracted microelastics from its stomach. tiny fragments, hardly bigger than sand grains. They were found in more than 90% of the fish in the area. The sight of the river carrying untreated sewage directly into the food chain startled onlookers. The level of contamination was finally acknowledged by local officials. By 2020, he was talking candidly about the damage to his own body. Malaria, music, had struck him multiple times since 1990. Every illness harmed his liver. He was informed by doctors that his liver function had declined and that a further serious infection could be fatal. The worn-out evenings, recurrent fevers, and weeks when he was hardly able to stand were not depicted in the rough picture people saw on television. He was astounded by the shift when he went back to the Amazon for dark waters in 2021. In other places, he had lost over 80% of the species he had captured on camera for river monsters. The river was depleted by hunting and illicit mining. He challenged poachers who acknowledged selling rare fish for exorbitant rates abroad. Some of the river's sections appeared deserted and lifeless. He provided data that showed a roughly 50% decline in megafish populations in just 5 years. He was counseling UN conservation panels 2 years later. The extinction of over half of the freshwater fish species, music, was imminent. In the Congo, the Amazon, and the Mekong, apex predators were vanishing. He turned down a biopic offered by Netflix once more. He didn't want his life to be portrayed in a Hollywood fashion. He desired movement, music. He was still making progress by 2025. Movement was painful due to arthritis. He taught new fishermen ethical fishing through online classes at the age of 69. He advised them to honor rivers and refrain from pursuing notoriety. Because he spoke from experience rather than tales created in safe chambers, his voice had music weight. In an interview the same year, he made a startling statement. According to him, rivers perished before monsters ran out. Despite its simplicity, the statement contained years of reality. River flows had decreased by 30%, music, since 2009, according to his logs. The Mekong and the Amazon have dried up completely. He learned from local fishermen that certain species had been extinct for years. He cautioned that many river systems could collapse by 2030 if immediate action is not taken. His influence kept growing. He established the Wade Angling Trust in 2022 to preserve and clean waterways. Music, they took on the Ganges in their debut effort. They eliminated about 10 tons of garbage in less than a month. The before and after photos went viral on the internet and provoked a national discussion in India. As knowledge increased, enforcement got better, and the trust grew to collaborate with other conservation organizations. Next followed a tale he kept to himself for years. A hippo attacked him close to a distant tributary in 2018 when he was on a private trip in the Congo. As he clambered up a muddy bank, the beast struck him so forcefully that his leg was fractured. He was left alone in the forest for 2 nights and ate very little. He created a splint on his own and awaited assistance. The story was only made public by him in 2025. He remembered the incident because it demonstrated how nearly he had vanished in a river he cherished. His private life was peaceful and uncomplicated. Between 2000 and 2020, he traveled more than 250 days a year and lived alone in rural England. Despite missing everyday life occurrences, he claimed to have no regrets. He had a purpose because of the river, and he followed it wherever it took him. He is now writing a memoir for 2026. Music, he says he will uncover forgotten tales, unique images, and creatures that might have vanished. If nothing is done, he warns once more, some rivers may completely collapse by 2030. There is more to the book than just recollections. It is a last-ditch effort to save the watery environments that molded him.